Good morning. Good morning. Welcome. I know that this interview is going to really help some people because Whitney and I, when we met, began to just discuss our interests. And we're both very interested not only in teamwork, but in relationships. And so many times, companies, organizations, throw people together on the job and just expect that dynamics are going to work, and it doesn't work. And it's the same thing in relationships. Sometimes we jump into a relationship, or we feel thrust in a relationship, or we get in a relationship, whether it's with a significant other or whether it's a friendship. And before we know it, we're like, this is not working. And one of the reasons it's not working is because we didn't anticipate that there were differences between us. We're individuals. And what we arrived at, Whitney and I, is the conclusion that if we don't deal with the dynamics of the relationship, then those same dynamics have the potential to destroy the relationship. So enjoy the interview today. And remember, decisions, just like doors, take you places. Have a great day. Okay, we have Whitney today. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Okay, do you remember when we met?
I do, absolutely. Speaking on behalf of the Refuge for DMST,
Okay.
and you were there for Jail to Jobs.
And there was a very good conversation that took place before she spoke on things such as leadership, John Maxwell, the DISC personality.
I feel like we immediately connected because we were both speaking the same language. I was like, wait a minute.
That's one thing. I took a Maxwell class one time, and the promise was you begin to speak a new language.
Yeah.
And so it's like it doesn't matter where you're at, if you've read some of the same books, have the same beliefs, so to speak. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
So that takes us into, I was looking at your site. Whitney has a thriving business. She'll be able to explain it. And something that stood out to me, and the question was posed or the statement made that companies and organizations tend to throw people together and just expect them to navigate that space.
Yes.
Any comments?
Survivor style.
Okay.
So we look at that and think, so many companies do this and just expect that people are going to know how to gel or they're going to want to gel. And honestly, what it comes down to for us is this idea that people differences trigger people problems.
Repeat that for us.
People differences trigger people problems.
That's nice.
Like all the time, everywhere. And they don't have to, but that's honestly, when you think about whether it's in organizations or it's at home, the way that we show up in the world, if I don't know who I am in the mix, and I don't know how I'm perceived, and I certainly don't understand who you are in the mix, we may have a problem.
Definitely.
And so the more we can understand who we are in the mix, whether that is a team dynamic or a family dynamic, and the more that we understand how the world perceives us, then that's going to open the door to some trust building. And the whole thing about team dynamics is that you have to have trust. You have to have trust to build this cohesive, collaborative team. Well, you can't get to trust if I don't understand who you are and why you're showing up the way that you are.
Okay, what came to mind when you said that? Trust, because I think there's different levels of trust.
Yeah.
And generally when I speak to people and the word trust comes up, generally people go from one extreme to the next. I don't know about your experience, but they're either like, I just trust everybody and I've got to trust everybody, or I don't trust anybody.
Yes.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think it depends on the person. Like we all show up in the world differently, and we all have our own lived experiences, right? And it's our life experience that has created how we show up where trust is concerned. So again, that's why I feel like you can't just assume that building that foundation of trust is going to be easy peasy. Like there's got to be some significant work done for a particular team, any given team, any organization, to try to work around the things that might be getting in the way of building trust. And the very first thing that we believe is that personality piece. So again, I want to walk into an organization and be able to help them and everybody in that organization understand, or let's just say a specific team, understand who they are personality wise, how they're wired naturally, and take into account those life experiences. And then if I'm a person in that group and I'm learning, if I'm a learner in there, and I start to recognize like, oh, so I have a very dominant personality as an example. I have a very dominant personality. And so I show up kind of large and in charge sometimes, I'd like to think it's always in a fun way, but that might be kind of intimidating to somebody else who shows up much more quietly. And so if I'm digging into this information and I start realizing like, oh wow, this other side is perceiving me as being a bully, or they're perceiving me as like I don't ever let anybody else talk, or I always want to be in the lead, I always want to take control. That's not true for me, but it might feel that way sometimes, because if you're a quiet person and you don't step up and take the lead, I will. So we got to understand each other and where we're coming from. And so once I start realizing like, oh wow, that's how I'm being perceived, then it opens the door for me as the learner to go, wow, maybe I do need to dig into not only why I'm showing up the way that I am, but why you're showing up the way that you are.
Okay.
So it opens all these avenues around trust and the different ways we each approach it.
And considering what you do with different organizations, you're dealing with live humans.
Yeah.
So the things that stand out to me, I always look at the hows. And okay, information is good, facts are good, but I might just be having a lousy day.
Yes.
And I came into this place not how I normally show up, but I showed up this way. Is there an experience or a memory that stands out in your teaching or something to where you...
Well, for one, what we talk about is that like where trust is concerned, that it has to be vulnerability based trust. So you have to be willing to say, I don't understand that, I'm confused, I just walked in here and I'm really not in a good place.
Okay.
You know, so how I'm showing up today, this isn't how I normally show up. Like, be willing to say that instead of hiding behind who you think you need to be, or the pressure of feeling like they're not going to get me, they're not going to get it, whatever it is. So that's one thing that I'm thinking about. But then it also just made me think about when I used to coach CrossFit, and in CrossFit, which is a random aside, but in CrossFit, we would talk about how every day was a new day. So you might show up and do a workout one day and you're crushing it. It feels really good. You feel really strong. You show up the next day, you could do the same workout and you just fail miserably. Life is like that. Like every day is a different day. So one day I might show up and I might have woken up and be great that day. And I walk into my environment with my people and everything's peachy. And the next day I woke up the other day and I feel like I threw my back out. Okay, I'm not having such a great day because of that. And so I'm going to show up in a little bit different mood, and the people that I'm around may not understand that. So I think part of it is a willingness to understand yourself and get on a real just basic level. I'm in a different headspace today. I'm in a different heart space today. And then secondly, to be able to be okay with saying that. If you're going to interact with other people, you need to be able to communicate those things. If you're by yourself in an office on your own, not a problem.
Right. Those have been some of the best working environments that I've experienced, where the culture, there is trust, there is vulnerability, but that vulnerability and it not being used against you help create trust. And so I'll just speak the organization, Jail to Jobs, that I work for. Not only was I welcomed, but there were different things. Like this office is where I first started. And they were like, what can you do? And I said, well, I have computer skills. And they said, oh, okay. Well, what I didn't realize is they used only Apple products. I had not worked on a Mac. I've just been working on PCs and other things. And so I looked and I said, okay, this should be easy. And then the young lady who was showing me, she's swiping with the 2 fingers. And if you do this, and I'm like,
there's a learning curve.
I don't know. And one thing she did every time, and we were dealing with the culinary department, so we're receiving orders and taking care of transactions, but she never lost patience. She answered all of my questions. And to this day, she's moved on and she works for another organization, but I still call her to check on her because I said, your attitude and patience with me allowed me to be able to tell you, I don't know.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think that's great.
I think that's a huge piece of it. It's not just your ability to be able to be vulnerable in that situation. It's like giving and receiving feedback, right? You have to be able to do both. And so in that situation, she was able to be that other side and that sort of soft landing for you to feel safe enough to be able to say, I don't know.
True.
And yeah, that's a big deal.
So how did you get to this place? I know we're speaking about business, but as an individual, because I'm going to speak personally, I don't think that a lot of people really want to do the work to know themselves. Now that can come across as a very judgmental statement, but I'm going to say this. One, I'm basing that off of, for decades, I didn't myself. I operated from what I thought was best for the presentation I wanted to present to different individuals or entities.
Yeah.
And then a short aside, when I've run into different people and I'll ask different questions, just, in relationships, do you really know you? Because you're saying you like this, but when I see you do this, you're like, it just turns on a button. But you say you like this, and do you really know yourself? Well, that's always what I've done. And I'm like, any thoughts?
It's kind of a twofold story because in regard to how I got here.
Yes.
I would say, I was thinking about this on the way over here, actually. It's kind of funny. I would say, I had this situation at my, a job that I thought was my dream job, and this is legit. This is how I got here. I had a manager that I didn't connect with, and was under that manager for 5 years until I thought I was going to have a nervous breakdown because I just wanted to do a good job for her, and she just kept talking to me in a way that was crushing me and would say things like, yeah, you're just never going to get that. You're not wired that way. And you can't, I feel like Will Smith sometimes when I say, you can't outwork me. I will beat you, not I will win every race, but just, I am a really hard worker. Right. And so I just have really strong work ethic. And so I will work my tail off to do a good job for you. And in this experience, it was my dream job. And so I thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to get fired from my dream job if I don't figure this out. So it was this moment for me. It was like I had this epiphany of, I got to figure out how to bring a different person to the table that connects with her on the level she needs, or I'm going to get fired. Like that, it was basic. And long story short, I dug into all this personality stuff, and I started digging into the John Maxwell's and all the leadership stuff, and I learned what I learned, and I completely transformed that relationship over a 2-year period. But then if you take a step further back, like how did I get here? It makes me think about, have you ever heard like psychiatrists? A lot of times people that go into psychology are people that had problems, challenges when they were younger, and they were trying to figure out their own stuff, and that's what drew them into the field. Okay. And they become therapists. And I'm like, well, of course that would be the thing. And so when I start looking at that with myself, I'm like, wow, I think ultimately I have always, like most human beings, we struggle with this feeling of like, do we belong? Should we be here? Do we, I don't use imposter syndrome that's not a term I use very often, but it's this idea of just feeling like, am I enough?
We want to be significant.
Yeah. And all our growing up years, because of our experiences, there are just moments in life where I think I felt a disconnect with people, whether it was family or friends or whoever. And so when I look back, I think, wow, ultimately that's what it is for me, is I just so believe in the, how important just human connection is. And so we always say with brilliant people, that we help organizations create, we help managers create cohesive, collaborative teams. But it really comes down to connection and community in the workplace or in the home. So for me, I think it comes from a deep, but kind of rooted place from childhood even, of just being unsure in the world and wanting for me to feel that connection and recognizing that so many people don't feel that. So many people feel lost in or lack of connection. And so what I learned in my work experience with that manager was that it's actually not that hard. It's actually not that hard when you start figuring out personalities, like on the basic level, and you can go really far from there, but on that basic level, when I understood who she was and who I was and how she was perceiving me, and then how I was perceiving her and why, completely changed, like whole paradigm shift. I mean, I completely transformed that relationship, and she didn't change. I got new information.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
the reason I believe so much in personality profiles is the Enneagram.
I love the Enneagram.
And there were a lot of situations where I could walk in and I'm feeling really good. And there were some good things that occurred with me and with others before I came into a particular building. And when I would come into that building, I felt a shift on the inside.
Yeah.
And somebody might come up to me like, "How you doing, Sean?" And I'm like, "I'm good." And they're like, "Are you sure?" I said, "I'm good." And for years, I didn't know what to attribute that to. And then when I took that Enneagram, and it helped me see if I have the perception that something is out of place or someone is doing something wrong. Key word, and I'll come back to it. My perception.
Yes.
My perception is flawed. But if I perceive that, so when I walk into a certain situation and people were doing different duties, but there was a group over here just talking, if my perception was you're being lazy or you're uninterested or you're not investing, I may not say it because I may not be in charge of that particular environment. But when I came to understand that, it helped me identify a feeling comes from a place. And my feeling was coming from, I think something's out of place. And so what I learned to do is first assess, is my perception factual? Because what if those 5 people were on a break? But I don't know that.
Right.
And so what I've done is first, when I walk into situations and I may be feeling really great and then all of a sudden I don't, the first thing I examine it, what did I see? Yeah. What am I seeing? And then I ask myself, am I seeing properly? Because, we all have an opinion. We have likes and dislikes. And so that helped me so much because once I was able to identify different things, I was just able with the new information to be like, it's okay, or approach it in a humble manner and try to correct something, not correct an individual, but just try to add to that situation to make it seem better. Meaning if they were straightening chairs out, but somebody was moving a little slow and they kept getting distracted, I'd walk over, "What are you guys doing?" And inevitably they were moving chairs, "Let me help you." And then that individual, I might get next to them and we're having a conversation and I felt good, the job's getting done. And so I really believe in learning about others and learning about yourself, and there's many ways to do that. And so I applaud what you do. What else is going on with you? Wide question.
Yeah, I'm like, in what capacity?
In what capacity? What's the last good thing that you read or saw? Because, watch videos, read books, or heard on a clip.
Oh, I don't know. My memory's not so good in that regard.
Okay.
That's a hard one for me.
Okay. For me, it was a book called Good Prophet by Charles Colt.
Okay.
And what I do is, if I read a book, I'll take something away from me. So what I took away, the way that they're doing business, and the Coke is not C-O-K-E, it's K-O-C-H, Charles Colt.
Yes.
And so basically, they put people in positions that they thrive in, and when they thrive, they're rewarded. And that's the model. The model is not, okay, this manager, you manage these people. If they thrive, it's really you and we move you up. It's if that manager is managing, they're in their position. But some of the people, if they're thriving in those positions, the way they basically run their businesses is you have an opportunity. Not to get that manager fired, but we'll find a place. We'll find something for you to do. And that's why they're so expansive in what they invest in.
Well, you're just making me think about when people talk about how, do you have the right people in the organization? And then next question, is on the bus. Do you have them in the right seat on the bus?
Yes.
And I'm like, I love that what you're describing is that they're not just immediately saying you're not the right person.
Yes.
But it's, are you in the right seat? I love that.
I heard, and I might get their names wrong, but they are Christian filmmakers. They're 2 brothers. They made Fireproof.
Yes, I know. Okay.
And
I don't know their names, but I know of them.
There's some more movies.
Yeah.
But their short story was one of them went to the pastor. They both went to the pastor. I don't remember. And basically said, we're going to have to leave the church. And the pastor said, why are you going to have to leave the church? And they said, well, God has called us to write movies. And the pastor, and I love this, he said, you don't have to leave. You can do it here. And those movies, I just can't name. Facing the Giants is another one. The movies they've garnered profits monetarily, but if you've ever seen one of their movies, they're like great inspirational movies. And the point is, that pastor didn't just see what they were saying. He saw an opportunity for a service that his church could help provide that would make a difference. And I love people like that. And when you love people like that, people who I'm open not just to hear what you're saying, but also to recognize if there's a connect. I was talking to someone earlier today, and I made the statement, a lot of people seem to be, because I don't know everyone, so I'm just going to say a majority of people that I've seen or heard speaking a lot on social media or just on the news, they choose to emphasize the differences rather than the likes. And the way that I tie that in, I'll make real short, the way that I tie that in, I heard a police officer make a statement and a civilian make a statement. The police officer said, I want to do my job and go home safe to my family. The civilian said, I want to do whatever I'm doing as far as a job or just living and make it home safely. So if we enter our exchanges, meaning a police officer and a civilian, with the thought in mind, what we have in common, don't know how it's looking right now, we both want to make it home to our families safe. And that's what I try to do. And that's why I enjoyed when I met you, the conversation. There wasn't, we got to talk about this or you're about that, or didn't even know you had a business yet, but just the fact, just what do you like to talk about? What are you passionate about? And out of that passion, we arrived here.
Yes. Yeah, I was super lit up that night after that, during that conversation, and was so excited to keep the conversation going. And so for me, it's been awesome just to get to know you even further and to understand what it is that you're about and what you're doing. And it's inspiring for me because to me, I think that, again, it goes back to that human connection, for one. It goes back to that idea that that police officer and that civilian, that ultimately at the end of the day want the same things out of life, right? And it's going to look differently. How you show up in the world and how you are doing that thing and getting the results that you're looking for is going to be different than how I'm doing it. But ultimately, we still want the same things. We still want to succeed and help others connect and serve people in whatever way that looks like. And so I think that when we can like get past the the literal differences, maybe,
right?
Whether, oh, you're a man and I'm a woman, and so we're going to approach the world differently. If we can get past those literal differences and recognize down at our core, we're pretty much the same.
True.
It's beautiful. So I don't know.
Okay.
But you reminded me. I did just read, and of course I sound like a broken record because I just read about organizations that have to. It's like they have to build trust, right? And how do we build trust? How do we build that vulnerability-based trust? And once you build that trust, how do you, and they talk about 5 behaviors that are so necessary in an organization. But I look at these 5 behaviors as, again, necessary in life, whether you're at home or you're at work. And it's so trust. You got to be able to have productive conflict. You got to be able to make team commitment. And so what that looks like is at work, if it's, at work, you don't have people that are out for number one. They're making a commitment to the team for the overall success of the organization. At home, you don't have your little lone wolf, whatever. If it's your kid who's, y'all don't understand me, and they're out here on their own, and there's disconnect between the, adults in the house and the kids in the house. So that's commitment. And then accountability, being able to hold each other accountable to ultimately get results, whatever those results are that you're seeking. And so those are the 5 behaviors of basically having a cohesive team, but you got to have all that in play to be able to have that advantage to have a successful company. Anyway, it was a really good book.
She did pretty good I don't remember the last book I read. My memory's not good.
I literally just finished it 2 days ago.
But that's the good thing about conversation. It draws out
Yes.
of one another. So what is it that your company actually does? What is the name of your company and what do they actually do?
So, name of the company is Brilliant People, and we empower, our sort of tagline is we empower managers to create cohesive collaborative teams. And we kind of bring it down to this whole idea again. It's like, we believe there is this sort of culture revolution that's needed, but in some organizations, like we say, our word revolution has parentheses around the R. So it's revolution, evolution, because in some companies, they may need a full-on revolution. It could just be toxic workplace. But in other companies, they may be on the right path. They've just kind of either gotten lost along the way or they need a little more in a particular area, and that's where the evolution happens. And so for us, we go in and work with organizations and, specifically to help them start from that ground place, that building that foundation of trust, starting with personalities and then working them through those 5 behaviors I just identified. Patrick Lencioni is someone that we have followed from the beginning, and we just believe in every word that guy puts out. And so we do a lot of teaching around sort of the principles that he came up with. And it's been amazing. And I think that it is just really this idea of helping organizations understand that you gotta, we all need each other.
Okay.
Right, to be successful, to whether it's, we work a lot with school districts, and then we also work with corporate entities. And one of the things we try to tell people is, if you're an individual in a school district, as an example, your reasons for coming in and working in education are probably pretty similar to everybody else in education. Not to overgeneralize, but my guess is if you work in education, it's because you're super passionate about bringing up young leaders through the system and then putting them out in the world, right, through education. And so ultimately, when you have disconnect between the people that you're working with, if you can help people understand, hey, we're all here with the same end goal. We want this school district, we want this school, whatever it is, to be successful. We want these kids to be successful. If we can help people understand that, then everybody wins. But we can't get there until they learn those basics and come up through the system.
What I've heard that's been consistent in all of your examples is the fact that the principles that you're applying to businesses and organizations, they also are good in home life and in relationships. And that was one of the things I was thinking about, because I had written it down, or actually I typed it, and I was like, okay, relationships. And I was thinking about it, and I said, she's not going to talk about relationships. But then I was like, in my own mind, I was like, I'm going to ask her, do the principles work in relationships and home? And I didn't have to ask, because from the beginning you kept, boom, we're going to come back, boom, we're going to come back. And there was a course one time I took called Winning at Work and at Home. And that was his basic premise. The principles, you don't have to leave your faith home, but also when you go to work, you can have it and you can be successful. And so that's what I wanted to ask you, were saying that, and I just want to just bring that out, the fact that a good principle is not just bound where you heard it at. And I share that to say, I've learned things on a softball field that have helped me in a church. And they said, come on, I give an example, short example. We were winning by like 15 points. I play Rover. I said, I want to pitch. And they're like, man, the game's almost over. I said, let me pitch these last 2 innings. No exaggeration. I walked like 11 people in a row. And at first I was trying hard. And then I was like, man, you're not calling it, dude. I'm not that bad. And then I just realized I just said 11 people in a row. And there, obviously we had a big lead. And I got replaced. And I sat and I pondered that, because I'm always open to learn a lesson anywhere. And the lesson that I took away from that, play your position. It looked easy to pitch. It looked fun to pitch. I love Rover. I'm running around, and I did great at Rover, but I wanted to pitch. And so having learned that lesson on a softball field, when I was in church or when I belonged to different organizations, and they might say something like, hey, we're going to celebrate this birthday party, or we want to celebrate this anniversary, and Sean, you're a very good organizer, we want you to organize it. And I would say no. And they said, why? I like to organize. I like to organize. I don't like to be in charge. I like to see things done right, and I'll do the work it takes to get it right. And I told him, I said, something I'm not good at, I'll start it on time. I'll get everybody involved. But the fun aspect, when you think of an anniversary, when you think of a birthday, there's a fun component. And my fun component is not it. Meaning, if there was a checklist for this is what you have to have for a great birthday party or anniversary, I'll get it right. But I know that fun component, just for me, play your position. Mm-hmm. And so that's just something I learned on a softball field that helped me not to mess up the organization or mess up something in church, because I just play your position.
I love that. That to me just kind of speaks to boundaries as well. Like you have good boundaries, and that's a good thing. That's going to help you, and it's going to help the organization, right? Had you taken the job and it's not really where you wanted to be, then it wouldn't have turned out in the way that they were hoping that it would. So yeah, that's a good one.
Okay. Is there anything you'd like to ask me in closing? I've always, what I ask people to do, I offer myself. Doesn't mean you have a question, but just some here.
No, I guess for me, I would say, is there can you think of one moment in your history of that, like, got you down this sort of leadership path, right? Why are you interested? What's that one thing? Or is it a culmination, right? It's a lifetime of things.
One thing that got me to this point was a broke heart. And so the reason that a broke heart did that, it humbled me.
Yeah.
It helped me assess who I was, who I wasn't. And then it helped me navigate through all of that. And so the only thing that I desire to share with others are things that I've learned. Mm-hmm. So it's never about I have to be at the front of the room. It's never about how much authority I have to have. But what always helps me is I want to see you be the best you can be, because when you're not your best, there's going to be hurt. Mm-hmm. Generally, you're going to cause some harm. And that happened to me. Mm-hmm. And I just don't want that to happen to someone else. Now, that might be an example that goes all the way out here, but that was a seminal moment where I began to say, I want to help people. I want to empower people however I can do it. Now, when I discover my gifts and graces, okay, I know how to do it. Mm-hmm. That was it. Because I'm an only child, so I didn't have brothers and sisters. And so when I was growing up, it's just like, be the best you can be. If you don't know how to do that and you can't learn it quick enough, learn what you can and do the best. That broke heart put me in a different position to not only want to help people be their best, but understand some of the complications and want to work with them through it.
Well, and I was going to say, would you agree that in regard to being able to help somebody, like, I think that you really need to have had an experience. So there's a difference in, I had a client tell me recently, and this was the best compliment ever, but this is kind of making the point here. He said, when I've been in a session with brilliant people, when you have facilitated, he said, I know there are 30 other people in the room, or there are, 60 other people in the room. He goes, this particular person has been in several of our sessions. And he goes, but I feel like you're talking directly to me. And he said, there's a difference in a facilitator who, I forget what you call it, like a corporate trainer who is given material to just learn the material and turn around and go, facilitate the material. For me personally, I have lived these experiences. I have had a situation at work that didn't work out for me, that I was scared to death I was going to lose my job. And then I was humbled, and then I went and I learned, and I came back and I put it into play, and it changed everything. So when I go out and teach and I speak to the different examples I'm giving, I have experienced this. And I think that I feel like that's what you're saying. And I think that that's a huge, not to say that there aren't great teachers out there that have not actually experienced it, but I think that typically the other side that's catching it from you, whatever it is that you're putting out there, it's going to be a more impactful experience for them when it really is coming from this place of this lived experience that now you're trying to share with them to help them do better in life.
I totally agree. You know, I'll just go different places and but when I'm talking to different people and they'll be speaking about presentations or speaking, and I'll always share with them, I said, look, information is great. You have to have your information.
Yeah.
I said, but empathy, there are some intangibles that I'm telling you I can't put on paper, but when you've been through it or you genuinely care about who you're speaking to, something that's not seen can transfer. And when they feel that transference, the same way that gentleman was able to say, there have been situations I felt no transfer, a lot of information exchange, but no transfer. But with you, hey, I feel like you see me as significant. Even though I know there are numerous people in here, you're transferring to me that I am significant, and that's enough for me to learn. So I totally agree.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Anything you want to share in closing?
Well, if you're looking for brilliant people, you can find us at mybrilliantpeople.com or on LinkedIn. You can find us at My Brilliant People. And yeah, I think that's it.
Okay. I thank you for the day and you have a wonderful day. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.